Hello, everybody. So, as we approach an Olympic summer and a Games that will be hosted in a European capital city for the first time since London 2012, I am really excited today to be speaking with Andy Amery, ex-Metropolitan Police event planner and more recently security advisor on a number of high-profile international sporting events. We're going to be talking about how he found his way into policing, the sporting event world, working with local police forces on international events, and also how the sporting event security industry has changed over the last 20 or so years. Welcome, Andy. And before we get into all that sporting glory, tell us more about you and your journey into policing.
Yeah, thanks, Becky. It's a pleasure to be here. One thing I'm not is a sporting excellence person myself. Sport and I just don't seem to get on. But my sort of policing history, really, I joined the police cadets as was the system in the days, age 17, having just completely failed most of my O-levels. At the age of 16, was really lost, didn't know what I wanted to do. And my father was in the police force, as was my godfather and others. And it was the natural thing to do, if you like. So a year in the police cadets, then off to police training school. And then I found myself in the depths of Camberwell, Brixton and Peckham at the age of 19, which made me learn about life fairly quickly, shall we say. So that was my routine. And then I suppose really right from organising a sponsored run for the entire school many, many years ago for the lifeboat, that really got me into events. And then having been in the front line of Brixton in 1985 and then got heavily involved with the poll tax and other stuff, I really developed an interest for the sort of the public order and major event side of policing.
So public order, major events, and then the London 2012 bid. So how did that come about? How did that kind of connection to the bid team come about?
Obviously conscious of time, basically I ended up in royalty protection, and I organised a large number of events towards the end of 2002, the Queen's Golden Jubilee celebrations, Prince Edward's wedding, Princess Margaret's and the Queen Mother's funerals. And I was standing at the Jubilee thinking, well, what next? I was about to be promoted. And as is quite right in the police, and you tend to get moved when you get promoted. And so I was offered an opportunity to go and be a staff officer for a senior ACPO officer up at Scotland Yard, but it was in the intelligence department, which probably didn't really suit me, to be perfectly honest. But off I went. But unbeknown to me, discussions were going on behind the scenes at a very senior level. And then Assistant Commissioner Sir David Vaness, a wonderful man, approached me and said, we need you to go and work on London's Olympic bid. Off you go and win it. And that was basically, this is Barbara Cassani and Seb Coe, pleased to introduce you. Off you go, laddie, as it was. And yes, that was the start of it, really. I think there was about 6 or 7 people on the bid team. We're all sitting there on the top floor of Canary Wharf with no office space, no office desks, thinking, well, where do we start? And it was absolutely fascinating.
Amazing. What a different experience to go from, frontline, actual events, kind of dealing with public order to then being sat in an office in Canary Wharf. That must have taken a bit of adjustment, actually. Very different style.
It wasn't just a sitting in an office. It's sitting in the office with a couple of very high-profile elite athletes, some fantastic business people, and I'm there probably the only policeman they've ever spoken to in their life. To plan the security, not only for the proposed bid, this is how we would deliver security for the Games, but the bid for London had to be kept secure in its own right as well, because obviously it's a major international competition. It's worth billions of pounds to the winning host city. And so all these pressures suddenly appear and you think, well, I'm just an inspector from the Met who doesn't really know much about these things. Who was never any good at athletics, as I said in the first place. But here's a challenge, and wow, what a challenge, and what a fantastic opportunity. And lessons and the learning and the way the whole thing developed was absolutely incredible.
Take us back to that moment. And I checked earlier, actually, it's almost 19 years ago to the day. So the 6th of July, 2005. You heard, I don't know, were you in Trafalgar Square? There was a big thing, wasn't there? I remember there was people in Trafalgar Square, but you were probably in your office in Canary Wharf. And you heard that
No, I was in
London had
Singapore.
won. Oh, you were in Singapore. Amazing, as you are. What went through your mind in that moment when you heard that London had qualified?
I mean, basically, just put some meter. The bid process was a 2-year journey, and there are various stages to that in terms of demonstrating not only what the plan for security for London was and how we would build upon our excellence in counter-terrorism and the unique policing model that the UK uses, but about the multi-agency approach and all that good stuff that we do. That was what we were trying to sell to the IOC. And then we took a delegation of about 150 people over to Singapore, which is where the decision was made. And London took a load of school children with us as well, which made it quite complicated. We took, I think, about 50 or 60 school children from the depths of East London to one of the most restrictive countries on the planet in terms of its law enforcement. But again, working with those kids was just brilliant. So we had the children, the academics, the sport people, and a massive intelligence operation around who had the likelihood to win. And all of our intelligence was suggesting it was so close between London and Paris. But yeah, when we won, wow. The first thought that came to my mind was that I'm now in charge of the safety and security of the most highest profile party in the world, with not very good security on the perimeter. But we got on top of that, and it was fantastic. And Royals, senior athletes there, an amazing night. I had 2 telephones, and they both were constantly going off with messages from everybody, from the Home Secretary to my best friend. Truly amazing night. And I'm sure everyone remembers where they were when that decision was made, as you say, in Trafalgar Square.
Yeah.
It was a late night, but as you remember, it was a very early morning because of the incidents of 7/7 the following day, which changed things.
Changed things dramatically.
Even now, my phone rang at about whatever the time in the morning was in Singapore from Scotland Yard saying there is these incidents in London. The public view is that they're at the time power outrages, but we think that might not be the case. Get the team together. And that was a tricky day. It's one where the sort of the values of core policing, if you like, and the ability to bring people together, sit down and be honest and trust your partners because you've been through so much with them, really came to the fore and allowed us to sort of ensure that the response from 9,000 miles away was as good as we could do in the circumstances.
Yeah, and then you were out there kind of separate from it, but feeling really connected to it, I imagine. That must have been a really tough time. Yeah, absolutely. So you pack yourselves up, you get on that aeroplane, you fly back, you get back to that office in Canary Wharf, and then presumably the real work starts to happen. I mean, you've now got to secure an entire Olympic Games, as you say, in a capital city with kind of interesting boundaries, because we know we're going to do it very differently to how it's ever been done before. And you were part of that organising committee from a really early point. I mean, literally from day one. So actually, if we sort of backtrack a bit, so people might not necessarily know. So every time an Olympic Games is held, an organising committee is set up for the city that they are going to host that Olympic Games. So the London Organising Committee is local, because the London Organising Committee of the Olympic Games is set up as a complete entity. And that's what Andy was part of from you were like probably employee number 3, or no, you were still employed by the Met, I suppose, at that point. But yeah, so you, but so there you were working in this organisation that was just growing exponentially. How was that? What was that like to be in such an organisation that was just going through such change?
I suppose it takes about 6 months. So we won the bid in July, and it took until the beginning of the next year for things to settle down, and for to be develop the new company and everything else. But as you say, it goes from no people to about a team of 6,000 people, and 2 days after the games, it's gone. It's just a unique thing. And then if you add into that, it's a 6 or 7 year planning process, so that the government officials, the Prime Minister, the Commissioner of Police, and all the Chief Constables who are in position at the time that we start the planning are not likely to be there when we reach delivery. And that in itself creates some challenges. And the journey and the pace for London from a security perspective, once we had Robert Raine from the government position and Chris Allison from the police leading the national policing approach, myself and Ian Johnson and others in the organising committee, it was when you'd had that core team that were going to be there at games time did planning really develop and move on afoot. But it's very difficult. We went from 2 of us to 362 staff in the low-cost security team, and obviously 20,000 private security staff working in the delivery element of it, alongside all the policing and military and everything else. So a massive operation, very difficult to plan. The one lesson I take from the whole thing is actually it's all about the people. And if you can get the right people with the right mentality who have left their egos at the door, you're going to achieve greatness. But without having those people who understand the importance of working together and accepting a degree of risk, it's nigh on impossible to deliver.
It really is bigger than the sum of its parts, isn't it? It's bigger than any one individual. It's bigger than the individuals coming together. I mean, obviously, luckily for you, Andy, you found me. So, so that helped.
This is true. Indeed. Yeah. It's very interesting.
Andy,
from a policing perspective, we could probably talk about this in another session, but from a policing perspective, policing this is what we do. And learning to have the ability to bring in program managers, to bring in procurement experts, to diversify your usual approach was critical again to success, but probably not for today.
Yeah, no, well, that's really helpful actually. Yeah, so I think that's been really interesting, kind of that background to the bid and then the setting up. And I think we're going to come back next time and talk a bit more about the challenges of actually moving into that delivery, and then how that's changed in today, sort of over a decade on from the Olympics. So thank you so much, Andy. That was really interesting. Thank you.
You're welcome. I look forward to discussing further.